Hello, Abnormal family. You'll be hearing this one on Monday, so happy Monday, as happy as a Monday can be. I've got another encounter for you guys. I think you're going to really enjoy it, and it's out of Georgia. I think what I'm going to start, guys, at the first of the year, starting in January, I'm going to do a werewolf, dogman, whatever you like to call them, encounter for each state. How would that be? Let's do all of the states, guys. It was the winter of 2001 in rural Georgia. Around 1 in the morning, yes, you guessed it, nothing but trees and fields, with a scattering of houses every mile or so. The only source of light was the trace of a full moon settled behind clouds in a leafless burrows. It had been a little bit warmer than usual during the daytime, creating the perfect atmosphere for a foggy night. The day had been tiring. I was a senior in high school at the time, and with that came the normal stresses that everyone knows too well. On top of that, I also played basketball, thus the reason for such a late night drive in what most people would consider the middle of nowhere. We had lost yet another game away from home, but everyone was still in high spirits because Christmas vacation was coming up soon, and we always had fun coming back from games, no matter if we won or lost. The ride from the game was no issue. It was late, yes, but the ride had no issues. There are always stories of deer running out in front of the vehicles during the late night or early morning hours, the fall and the winter in rural areas. I had it happen to me personally a year or so prior. So I would and still do constantly look around to the sides of the road even if I'm not driving. No, the real story starts when I was driving home from the school after the bus had dropped us all off. After saying goodbye and get home safe to everyone on the team, I loaded myself and my gym bag into my rodeo and I started taking the half-hour drive back home. As I stated before, this is nothing but rural southern roads, long stretches of nothing but woods and farmland as far as the eye can see. It was on one of these long stretches of woods that I saw it, and even after 20 years I still remember every single second of the encounter, and every time I come back home to my parents' house, I will still look for it in the same area that I first seen it. I was halfway to the house, listening to music. I don't recall what exactly. I was listening to probably either Creed or something like that. What I do remember is the cold wind whipping through my hair as I drove down the darkened two-lane county road. I always rode with my windows down and the AC running whenever it was late at night during the winter time. The cold breeze that both created as I sped down the road always kept me awake when I had a long day behind me. I wasn't speeding maybe 40 miles an hour down the lonely road, just enough to create the cold breeze. I needed to help myself stay awake. Suddenly, the fog started growing thicker, causing me to slow down more. As few people can imagine, a road like this one I was driving on and down isn't very wide. There are no shoulders to the roads, and there are no street lights, so the sudden push of fog all around made it much harder to see any animal that could run out into the road. The ditches on either side of the road are deep on that particular stretch of the road. There is a creek that runs through the woods there, and it passes through a culvert under the road. I felt something was off, like something was about to happen, which caused me to slow down even more and roll up my window as I strained to see against the foggy darkness. I slammed on my brakes, nearly causing my manual shift SUV to shut down because my foot slipped off the clutch, when I saw a blur to my right running right into the road in front of me. The animal was jet black against the whitish gray fog that had come even thicker. To my surprise, it looked very much like a black wolf. A little side note: Georgia is home to different large predators: black bears, alligators, coyotes. And though the Georgia DNR venomally designs mountain lions, I've personally been stalked while driving slowly on an ATV by this animal and have to roll my eyes at the DNR statements that people have misidentified a bobcat for a mountain lion. I grew up in the woods, and I know the difference between the two animals. I also know we have gray wolves and red wolves in Georgia, and have seen one in the fields around town. They are bigger than coyotes and definitely bigger than dogs. This black wolf stared out at me from the front. He was even bigger than any gray wolf I'd ever seen. A lot bigger. I continued down the road. The black wolf I stared at, it stood in front of me. I continued to stare out the front of me, trying to figure out what I was seeing. I knew it was a wolf, but I could not wrap my head around the size of it, nor could I figure out why it was just standing there. I didn't want to move. I just didn't feel the right to startle an animal that was just sitting there. I thought maybe it was stunned by the high beams of my headlights, and this thing was large enough I wasn't even sure I was safe in my truck. So I flicked the brights off to hopefully allow it to go. And that's when it happened. It took its paw, raised it into the air, and then slammed it on the ground. Startled me, I fell back into my seat, but that wasn't the worst thing it done. It then stood on its hind legs. This thing was huge. It was taller than the cab of my truck. It looked at me. I could see it look like it smiled. And it just casually walked off into the darkness and into the fog, into the cattle field. I drove past that area as fast as I could, but as safe as I could, fearing not to wreck in this area for sure. Getting stuck here would be terrible, knowing that it was out there and that it knew that I would be stuck. So I drove through cautiously, and I made it home safely. I've never seen this creature again since that night, and I pray to God I never see it again. But I wanted to share my encounter to let you know that these things are out there. I've only seen it once, but when I travel that road, I still look for it, and that area still bothers me. Thank you for sharing my encounter. That was a really good encounter. A lot of people, see things while they're driving, and you probably happened up on it in the fog, and maybe the fog had a little bit of not allowing it to hide as well. Maybe it's what kind of showed it, but I'm glad it walked off, didn't bother you, and you were able to pass by. Thank you for sharing your story, guys. Thank you for watching. Until next time, keep your head on a swivel. Don't be something's dinner, and we'll see you on the next one.